The weight on my wrist felt wrong. It was too light. The diamond that had caught the sun for 30 years suddenly felt like glass. That is when I knew. But I never imagined the truth would be wrapped in luxury leather, parked in my driveway, and smiling at me at dinner. They thought I was old, confused, finished. They forgot one thing: I was the one who taught them chess. And this is my final move. My name is Margaret, though everyone who mattered, especially David, called me Margot. I am 58 years old, and for the last 6 months, I have been navigating the quiet, hollow spaces of my life as a retired gemologist here in Willow Creek, Ohio. This house, perched on its quiet, tree-lined street, is too large for one person. It is a museum of a life well lived, and I am its only curator. I exist in the silence left behind by my late husband, David. He was a man who believed love should be tangible, something you could hold and weigh. He spent 40 years proving it, one gemstone at a time. My son, Julian, and his wife, Brooke, moved in 3 months ago. "It is just to take care of you, Mom," Julian had insisted, his face bright with the news of his big promotion at Innovate Solutions. "We do not want you rattling around in this big house all alone." I was relieved, at first, to have the silence broken. Brooke, especially, has a way of filling a room. Her voice is high and bright, her laughter quick. She adored the house. More specifically, she adored the things in the house. My collection. "Margot, this is just breathtaking," she would say, her manicured fingers hovering over the velvet boxes in my study safe. She never touched, not directly, but her eyes catalogued everything. David had such incredible taste. She always focused on the heaviest pieces, the emeralds David bought me in Colombia, the deep blue sapphires from our trip to Sri Lanka, and most of all, the diamonds. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the air thick and humid, sticking to my skin. I was dressing for a simple garden party luncheon. I reached into the safe for my favorite piece, the tennis bracelet David had given me for our 25th anniversary. 7 carats. Flawless, each stone a captured piece of light. As I fastened the clasp, I paused. I lifted my wrist, letting the bracelet catch the light. The weight was wrong. It was too light. I am a gemologist. My hands, even in retirement, are calibrated. They know the specific gravity of platinum, the dense, cold heft of a true diamond. This felt airy, almost hollow. I ran my thumb over the clasp. It felt different, too. Sharper at the edges, less worn by the decades I had loved it. I shook my head, a small laugh escaping my lips. 58. Perhaps this is what it felt like. Your senses dulling, your memory playing tricks. I dismissed it. It was just age. It had to be. But the seed was planted. A tiny, cold splinter of doubt. That evening, the doubt grew. Brooke came home carrying a bright orange box from a designer I knew cost thousands of dollars. She pulled out a leather handbag, the kind models carry, the hardware still covered in protective plastic. "Julian got that huge bonus. Mom," she sang, kissing him full on the mouth right in the kitchen. "He insisted I treat myself. Is he not the best?" Julian beamed, accepting my congratulations, but his eyes darted away from mine just a fraction too quickly. The splinter of doubt dug deeper. The impossible lightness of the bracelet on my wrist. The sudden, extravagant weight of the new bag in her hand. The math did not add up. The next morning, I told them I was going downtown to meet an old friend for lunch. Instead, I drove to the old quarter, to the small, unassuming shop of Mr. Alistair. He had been David's only jeweller for 30 years. He was a man who valued privacy and truth above all else. "Margot," he said, his face creasing into a genuine smile as the bell on his door chimed. "It has been too long. What brings you in? A cleaning?" "Yes, Alistair. Just a quick cleaning for this one," I said. I tried to keep my voice casual, but I could feel my pulse in my throat as I unclasped the bracelet and handed it to him. He took it. His smile faded instantly as the piece settled into his own experienced palm. He did not even need the scale. He knew. He picked up his loop, the small eyepiece that reveals the world in its true, unflinching form. He turned the bracelet over and over under the harsh white desk light. I watched his face. I saw it go through 3 distinct stages. First, the practiced eye of the professional, searching for markers. Second, a deep, furrowed confusion. And finally, a terrible, profound pity. It was the pity that broke my heart. He set the bracelet down gently on the black velvet tray, pushing it toward me as if it were contaminated. "Margot," he said, his voice low. He could not quite meet my eyes. "I am so sorry. This is a 5A replica. Very sophisticated, exquisite, even." He paused, taking a heavy breath. "But it is fake." I drove home. The fake bracelet was in my purse, wrapped in a tissue, but I could still feel its phantom weight on my wrist. A cold, cheap imitation of love. My real heart was pounding against my ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. I felt sick. When I pulled into the driveway, Brooke was on the porch, scrolling through her phone, her new thousands of dollars bag sitting beside her like a trophy. "Hey, Margot, how was your afternoon?" she called out, her voice painfully cheerful. I arranged my face into a smile. It felt like stretching cold clay. "Lovely, dear. Just lovely. A nice, quiet lunch. Good for you. You deserve to get out more," she said, turning her attention back to the screen. I went inside. The house, my sanctuary, suddenly felt alien. Every shadow seemed to be hiding something. I cooked dinner. I listened to Julian talk about his triumphs at Innovate Solutions, his words now sounding hollow and rehearsed. I smiled. I nodded. I played the part of the slightly dotty, aging mother. But inside, I was vibrating. I was a clock winding itself tighter and tighter, waiting to strike. I waited until I heard the final click of their bedroom door, then the low murmur of their television, then silence. I watched the clock on my nightstand. Midnight. 1 a.m. My house was silent, but my mind was screaming. At 2 a.m. I could not bear it another second. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the thick hall runner. I did not turn on a single light. I navigated the house by moonlight, my own home now a hostile territory. I reached the study and closed the door, the small click echoing in the stillness. The safe was hidden behind a heavy oil painting of David's ancestors. I pushed it aside. My fingers, shaking slightly, found the familiar coldness of the dial. Left. Right. Left again. The heavy thud of the tumblers falling into place was the loudest sound I had ever heard. I pulled the heavy steel door open. The velvet boxes were all there, stacked neatly, just as I had left them. For a terrifying second, I thought I had imagined it all, that Alistair was wrong, that I was, in fact, just old and confused. I reached for the first box, the emerald earrings. David had bought them for me the day Julian was born. I opened the lid. They glowed green under the sliver of moonlight from the window, but I did not need to see them. I just needed to touch them. I picked one up. A real emerald, especially one of this size, has a distinct coldness to it, a density. This felt warm, too warm. I held it up. It was glass, beautifully cut, expertly colored, but it was just glass. My breath hitched. I moved faster. The sapphire necklace, the one David had commissioned, with stones the color of the deep ocean. I opened the box. They were perfect. Too perfect. Synthetics. They lacked the tiny, natural inclusions. The silk that I, as a gemologist, had adored. They were sterile, one by one. I went through the collection. My 40th birthday pearls, replaced with coated plastic. The ruby engagement ring from my own grandmother, swapped for a flame fusion stone worth less than $100. My life's milestones, my anniversaries, my triumphs, my tangible memories of a 40-year love story, all of them had been hollowed out, replaced by worthless fakes. The horror washed over me in waves, cold and nauseating. This was not a robbery. A thief smashes and grabs. This was a replacement. This was systematic. This was done by someone who had access, time, and a plan. Someone who knew I would not wear these pieces often. Someone who knew their value. Someone who knew how the safe worked. I sank onto the floor of the study, the empty boxes around me like a graveyard. Besides me, only 2 people knew the combination to that safe. My son, Julian, and his wife, Brooke. My hands scrabbled in the back of the safe, looking for anything, any sign that I was wrong. My fingers brushed against a small, flat box I rarely opened. The brooch? It was an intricate, slightly old-fashioned diamond piece David's mother had worn. It was not my style, so I never wore it. I opened it. It was real. The cold, sharp, magnificent weight of it was unmistakable. They had missed one. Or perhaps they had not gotten to it yet. I closed the box and hid it in the pocket of my robe, the one piece of my past they had not yet managed to steal. The next morning, I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen island, forcing toast into my dry mouth. Julian and Brooke came down, bright and rested. "Morning, Mom," Julian said, kissing the top of my head. I looked up at him, my voice steady. "Julian, honey, I was looking for something last night. I cannot seem to find my good sapphire necklace. Have you seen it?" He laughed. It was an easy, dismissive sound. "The blue one, Mom. You probably just put it somewhere and forgot. You have been doing that a lot lately." He tapped the side of his head. "Do not worry. It will turn up." I watched him. He did not look concerned. He looked amused. And then I saw it. Across the granite island. Brooke looked up at him. She did not say a word. She just smiled. It was a small, sharp, private smile. It was a look of pure, unadulterated victory. I sat at that kitchen island, smiling at my son's dismissal, and I felt utterly, completely alone. That victorious smirk Brooke gave him was not proof. It was just a feeling. It was my word, the word of a forgetful 58-year-old woman against theirs. They were already painting the narrative that I was losing my mind. If I confronted them now, they would just deny it, lock the safe, and call me senile. I was trapped in my own home, a prisoner of the 2 people who were supposed to be my caretakers. I had no evidence. I only had the fakes. I needed to see what they would do next. I needed an ally. I needed someone who saw the world as clearly as I did. Someone whose mind was still sharp as a diamond edge. I needed David's sister. I called Clara. At 70 years old, Clara was formidable. She was practical, unsentimental, and she had never, not for 1 second, trusted Brooke. She called Brooke the climber. When David was alive, Clara's bluntness was sometimes grating. Now, it was the only thing I could rely on. "Clara," I said, keeping my voice low as I walked into the garden. "I need you to come over for tea. Today. Please. Just come." She heard the tension in my voice. "I will be there in an hour," she said, and hung up. Clara arrived, all smiles and bluster, carrying a potted orchid for Brooke. "Just a little social call. Darling," she boomed, kissing the air near Brooke's cheek. "You must be working Julian so hard. The poor boy." We sat in the living room. Brooke preened under the attention. After 30 minutes of polite chatter, I put my hand to my head. "Clara, dear, would you mind helping me find my migraine pills? I think I left them in the study." The second the study door closed, Clara's smile vanished. "What is it?" "Margot, you look like death." I did not speak. I just walked to the painting, moved it, and opened the safe. I took out the velvet box containing the fake sapphire necklace and opened it. Clara peered at it. "Lovely." "It is synthetic," I whispered. I took out the emerald earrings. Glass. I took out the bracelet Alistair had confirmed. 5A replica. Clara looked from the boxes to my face. Her own face hardened, turning to granite. "I knew it," she hissed, her voice low and furious. "I told David when they got engaged that girl was poison. And Julian," she spat the name, "he is weak. Always has been. He follows her like a trained dog." She slammed the sapphire box shut. "We have to catch them. Margot, we have to catch them in the act." I sank into the leather chair. "How?" "Clara, they will just deny it. They will say I lost them, or that I am confused." Clara started pacing the room, energized by the anger I was too drained to feel. She was the Moses of the family, as David used to say, the one who parted the seas. "We set a trap," Clara said. "We give them the opportunity. They have been replacing them one by one. But they missed one." "Right." I nodded, my hand instinctively going to the pocket of my cardigan, where I had hidden the diamond brooch. "They think you are gone," Clara said, a slow, cunning smile spreading across her face. "They think they have all the time in the world. So, we give it to them." The plan unfolded. "We are going on a trip. Margot, a 10-day Alaskan cruise. Just us girls." "A cruise?" "A fake cruise. I will book a refundable ticket for you, just in case. I will drive you to the airport. And she grinned, "am very good at social media. I will post pictures of icebergs and whales from my trip 3 years ago. We will make it look very convincing." I announced the trip that evening. "Clara and I are going on a cruise. 10 days to Alaska. Is not that exciting?" Their reaction was everything. It was too much. "Mum, that is wonderful." Julian rushed to hug me, squeezing me just a little too tight. "Alaska. How exciting," Brooke chimed in. "You absolutely deserve it. You need a real vacation." They were practically vibrating with enthusiasm. The next 2 days, they could not do enough for me. They helped me pack. Brooke insisted on folding my sweaters, asking which jewelry I planned to take. "Oh, just my simple pearls, dear." I said. I would not dream of taking the good pieces on a cruise. The day of the departure, Julian and Brooke both insisted on carrying my luggage to Clara's car. They fussed over me, kissing me goodbye, telling me to have the time of my life. We will take such good care of the house, Mom, Brooke said, her smile wide and brilliant. Do not you worry about a thing. I know you will. Dear, I said. Clara pulled out of the driveway. I watched them in the side mirror, waving, their perfect, false faces beaming. We did not go to the airport. Clara drove for 15 minutes to the other side of Willow Creek and pulled into the parking lot of a budget motel, the Willow Creek Inn, a place with vinyl floors and flickering neon. She had already checked us in under her name. Room 204, she said, handing me a key. It has a perfect view of the main road leading out of your neighborhood. Clara opened the trunk and pulled out a pair of high-powered binoculars. The observation post is ready, Clara said. Now, we wait. The Willow Creek Inn was as grey and anonymous as we had hoped. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Clara had rented a nondescript grey sedan, a car no one in our neighbourhood would ever recognise. We parked it in the back corner of the lot, giving us a clear view of the intersection they had to pass to leave our part of town. We settled into a miserable routine. Clara, armed with the binoculars, took the day watch by the window. I took the night, though I barely slept, listening to the hum of the ice machine and the sound of trucks on the highway. Posted a lovely picture of a fjord this morning, Clara muttered on the first day, tapping at her phone. Your cruise looks magnificent. Margot. Julian loved the post. What are they doing? I asked, pacing the small room. Nothing, she said, frustrated. Julian went to the gym. Brooke went to yoga. They ordered a pizza. They are acting like a normal couple on vacation from their annoying mother. The first day passed in a blur of stale coffee and anxiety. Every time a car passed, my heart leaped. But they stayed in. They were lazy. They were comfortable. They were predators resting after the hunt. Then, on the second day, just after 11 in the morning, we have movement, Clara said, her voice suddenly sharp. She pressed the binoculars to her eyes. Brooke, she is leaving the house. I rushed to the window, my own heart hammering. Are you sure what is she wearing? Her expensive trench coat. She is carrying... Yes. She is carrying a bag, and something in her hand. A box. I grabbed the second pair of binoculars. I saw her get into her own white SUV. I zoomed in on her hand just before she closed the door. My blood ran cold. It was a small, oblong box, covered in dark burgundy velvet. I knew it instantly. It was the box that held David's mother's diamond brooch, the last real piece, the one they had missed. She has it? I whispered. She has the brooch. Go, Clara said, grabbing the keys to the rental. I am right behind you. We were in the grey sedan before Brooke's SUV even reached the main road. I was trembling so badly I could barely buckle my seatbelt. Clara was focused, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Stay 3 cars back, I instructed. My voice strained. Do not let her see us. We followed her. My mind was racing. Where would she go? A pawn shop on the bad side of town, a cache for gold. Place in a strip mall, I pictured a dirty, dimly lit room. A man with a loop offering her pennies on the dollar. But Brooke did not drive toward the strip malls. She did not go downtown. She took the highway toward the new, affluent business park on the north side of the city. She drove past the glass-walled headquarters of software companies and investment firms. She pulled into the parking garage of the pristine Tower 1, the most exclusive office building in the area. "What is she doing here?" Clara muttered. "Seeing a lawyer?" "No," I said, a dawning, sickening realization hitting me. "Park over there." We watched the entrance. Brooke emerged from the garage, looking impeccable, the burgundy box clutched in her hand. She did not look nervous. She looked confident. She walked into the lobby of the glass tower. We waited for 5 minutes, then followed, keeping our heads down. We scanned the directory in the lobby, amid the law firms, financial advisors, and corporate HQs. There was one name on the 9th floor, DeSoto Fine Jewels, by appointment only. My professional expertise, the knowledge I had buried under grief, came flooding back. "This is not a pawn shop," I whispered to Clara, pulling her back toward the doors. "This is not even a retailer. This is a dealer. This is where people move high-value, off-market items. This is where estate pieces are bought quietly, or where stolen goods are laundered." We retreated to the car. The full scope of it was becoming clear. This was not impulsive theft by a greedy daughter-in-law. This was organized. This was sophisticated. We sat in the car, in the sterile parking garage, and we waited. The minutes stretched into an eternity. 45 minutes. 50. Just as I was about to suggest we go up, she appeared. Brooke walked out of the elevator, swinging her arms. The burgundy box was gone. She was on her cell phone, and she was smiling. We could see her clearly through the glass walls of the lobby. She laughed, a bright, carefree sound that did not carry through the glass, but we could see the shape of it. She looked triumphant. She looked rich. She got into her SUV and drove away. I sat in the rental car, the smell of old coffee thick in the air. The brooch was gone. The last piece of David's mother, the last piece of my history, had just been liquidated in a 9th-floor office. By appointment only. "She sold it," I said. The words were flat, devoid of emotion. The panic and horror were gone, burned away by something new, something cold and hard and very, very clear. We did not go back to my house. We could not. We drove back to the Willow Creek Inn, and I sat on the lumpy mattress. The image of Brooke's smiling, triumphant face burned into my mind. Clara posted another photo, a glacier, blue and cold. She tagged me. "Having a wonderful time. Margot." She wrote. I felt as cold as the ice in the picture. We spent the rest of the day in silence. The trap was set. The bait had been taken. Now, we were watching the predators enjoy their spoils. The next morning, we were back in position in the grey rental car, parked in the same spot, drinking the same bad coffee. Around 10 o'clock, the garage door of my house rolled up. It was not just Brooke this time. Julian was with her. They were both dressed up. Not going to work dressed, but special occasion dressed. He was in a sharp blazer, she in a silk dress. They looked like the perfect, successful young couple. They got into Brooke's SUV and pulled out of the driveway. "And where are the happy couple off to today?" Clara said, starting the engine, celebrating their newfound wealth. We followed at a distance. I expected them to go back to DeSoto Fine Jewels, perhaps to sell another piece they had already stolen and replaced. Or maybe to a bank, to deposit the money. They did neither. They drove to the most expensive part of the city, the Auto Mile, where dealerships for brands I had only ever read about glittered in the sun. They passed the Lexus dealer. They passed Mercedes. They pulled into the pristine, glass-fronted showroom of Maserati. "You have got to be kidding me," Clara whispered, pulling our car into the parking lot of a fast food restaurant across the street. We had a perfect, unobstructed view. They were greeted instantly by a salesman in a tailored suit. He did not lead them inside. He gestured toward the center of the showroom floor. There it was, a sports car. It was the most obnoxious, aggressive shade of red I had ever seen. A true look at me red. And tied to the hood was a gigantic, equally obnoxious white bow, the kind you see in commercials. Brooke clapped her hands. Julian put his arm around her. They were both grinning from ear to ear. I watched, frozen, as they circled the car. Brooke opened the driver's door and slid inside, her hands gripping the wheel. Julian took out his phone. He took a picture of her. Then, he got a salesman to take a picture of both of them, posing in front of the hood, their arms around each other, a portrait of success. They were buying my mother-in-law's diamonds. They were driving my anniversaries. They were spending my 40-year marriage. "They are disgusting," Clara said. We watched for another 20 minutes. They went inside, presumably to the finance office. Through the glass. We saw them sitting at a desk, laughing with the salesman as they signed papers. Then, Julian handed over a check. It was a cashier's check. Clean. Immediate. Untraceable. The money from the brooch. The last piece of David I had left. It had been liquidated, laundered, and transformed. My family's legacy, a piece of intricate, historic art, was now a loud, red-painted piece of metal parked in a showroom. It was the most vulgar magic trick I had ever witnessed. They drove it home. Brooke drove the new red car, Julian following in her old SUV. That night, back in the motel room, Clara let out a sharp, disgusted laugh. "Oh, you need to see this. Margot." She handed me her phone. Julian had just posted on social media. It was the picture of them in the showroom, beaming in front of the red car with its stupid, giant bow. I read the caption. "Hard work finally pays off. So excited to welcome this new baby to the family. A huge thank you to my amazing wife, Brooke, for always believing in me and pushing me to succeed. Onwards and upwards, promotion. Innovate solutions, blessed." I stared at the screen. The lie was complete. It was not just a theft they were hiding. It was a lie they were actively, publicly celebrating. They had stolen my past and were using it to build a glittering, false future. The proof was right there, posted for the entire world to see. That social media post was the final piece. The doubt was gone. The grief was gone. All that remained was a cold, quiet rage. I looked at the picture of my son, my child, beaming in front of that vulgar car, bought with the pieces of my life. He was not just a thief. He was a fool, publicly announcing his crime with a hashtag. "That is it," I said to Clara, my voice flat. "We are done waiting." "What is the plan?" she asked, already gathering our things from the motel room. "We are not going to the police, not yet. This is not a simple theft. Brooke selling that brooch at a high-end dealer? Julian's sudden bonus? This is organized. We need someone who understands this kind of war." Clara nodded, her face grim. "I know exactly who to call. Harrison. He handled David's estate. Remember, he is a shark. And he does not like being lied to. We did not go back to my house. We drove straight from the Willow Creek Inn to the offices of Harrison and Stone. Their building was the opposite of the glass tower Brooke had visited. It was old brick and dark wood, a fortress of old money and established power. Mr. Harrison was a man in his late 60s, impeccably dressed, with eyes that seemed to see everything. He had been David's friend, but this was not a social call. "Margaret." "Clara," he said, nodding, not smiling. "Please, sit. Clara said it was urgent." "It is," I said. I opened my handbag. I did not cry. I did not plead. I was Margot, the gemologist, presenting a case. I took out the plastic-wrapped bundle containing the glass emeralds, the synthetic sapphires, and the lightweight bracelet. I laid them on his vast mahogany desk. "These are fakes," I said. "They were placed in my private safe as replacements for the originals." Harrison leaned forward, putting on a pair of reading glasses. He picked up the bracelet. "Replicas of your collection." "Yes, my entire collection. David's gifts. Worth, well, they were priceless to me, but on the market, insured for over $1 million. He raised an eyebrow. "Who had access to the safe?" "Margaret." "Only 3 people. Myself, my son, Julian, and his wife, Brooke." I then laid out the rest of my evidence. I was meticulous. As a gemologist, I had never just owned my jewelry. I had catalogued it. For insurance purposes, I had kept copies of every single GIA certificate. I had detailed photographs, taken myself, of the inclusions and specific markers of each major stone. I had the original receipts from Alistair, dating back 30 years. I placed the thick binder on his desk next to the pile of fakes. Harrison opened the binder. He compared the certificate for the 25th anniversary bracelet with the cheap replica lying on his desk. He looked at the flawless, high-resolution photo of the original. He did not speak for a full 5 minutes. Finally, he closed the binder and looked at me over his glasses. His voice was cold. "Margaret, this is not just theft. A kid stealing from his mother's purse is theft. This," he gestured to the pile, "is calculated, systematic fraud. This is breach of fiduciary trust, given your son's role as your caretaker. This is, without question, financial elder abuse. It is a felony. Several, in fact." He steepled his fingers. "We have them. The certificates are the key. We can prove, stone by stone, what was yours and what they replaced it with." I felt the first real breath enter my lungs in days. "So what do we do?" Clara demanded. "We call the police. We go to her house and arrest them." "No," Harrison said, holding up a hand. "Absolutely not. Not yet." He looked at me. "They think they are smart, Margaret, but they are arrogant and sloppy." That social media post. He permitted himself a tiny, grim smile. "That was a gift. They think you are on a cruise. They think you are old, frail, and forgetful. We are going to let them keep thinking that." "You want me to go home?" The thought of sleeping under the same roof with them made my skin crawl. "Your cruise ends in 5 days," he said. "You will return as scheduled. You will be the loving, slightly tired mother. You will ooh and ah over their new car. You will ask them if they had a nice time while you were gone. You will play the part you have been assigned." "Why?" I asked. "We have the proof." "We have proof of the theft," Harrison corrected. "I want to know the conspiracy. Where did the money go? Who is DeSoto Fine Jewels?" What is this promotion at Innovate Solutions? Arrogant people like this. They never stop at just one thing. They are probably planning something else. He was right. The vulgarity of the car proved it. This was not about need, it was about greed. I will hire a private investigator, Harrison continued. A good one. I want bank records. I want to know everything about DeSoto. I want to know if Julian even has a job. While you are at home, playing the doting mother, we will be gathering the rest of the weapons. When we strike, it will not just be an accusation, it will be an execution. I stood up. I felt the strength return to my legs. I was no longer a victim. I was a client. I can do that, I said. I can play the part. The 5 days I spent hiding in that motel with Clara were the longest of my life. When my cruise was officially over, Clara dropped me at the end of my own street. I pulled my suitcase up the walk, forcing my shoulders to slump with a fatigue that was not entirely faked. I was exhausted, but not from travel. I was weary from the weight of the performance I was about to begin. I unlocked the door. I am home, I called into the silence. Julian was there in an instant, pulling me into a hug that felt like a cage. Mum, welcome back. How was Alaska? Did you freeze? Oh, it was just beautiful, dear, I said, patting his back. So many glaciers. But I am exhausted. The flights were terrible. We missed you, Brooke said, emerging from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. We have a roast in the oven to celebrate. How wonderful, I said, letting my gaze drift past them, toward the open door leading to the garage. It was parked right there, angled so I could not possibly miss it. The red was so bright it almost hurt my eyes. I put my hand to my chest and let out the gasp I had been practicing. Oh my goodness, Julian. What is that? Julian's face split into a grin. You like it? We wanted to surprise you. I walked toward it as if in a daze. I touched the cold, painted metal. My word. This is a Maserati, Julian. This is extraordinary. Your bonus must have been, well, it must have been a fortune. I watched them. This was the moment. Over the obnoxious hood of that car. Julian and Brooke looked at each other. It was a glance that lasted only a second, but it contained everything. It was smug. It was triumphant. And it was condescending. It was the look of two predators who had just finished a very large meal. Just a little something for all the hard work. Mom, Julian said, puffing his chest out. Innovate Solutions is really recognizing my value. I am stunned, dear. Absolutely stunned, I said. And that, at least, was the truth. Dinner was a masterpiece of polite torture. I sat at the head of my dining table, the one David and I had bought 20 years ago, and listened to them chatter. They asked me about the cruise, and I recited the details Clara and I had memorized from the travel brochure. I talked about icebergs and whale watching, all while they ate my food and drank my wine. Brooke was glowing. She kept raising her left hand to brush her hair back, a gesture she had never favored before. I saw why. On her wrist was a new watch. It was not one of mine. I would have recognized it. This was new. It was platinum, delicate, and dripping with diamonds. I knew the design. It was worth at least $30,000. The brooch, liquidated and strapped to her wrist. I wore the fake tennis bracelet, the one Alistair had identified. I had to. It was part of the costume. As I was reaching for the wine, Brooke put her hand on mine, stopping me. Her new, real diamonds clinked softly against my worthless cubic zirconia. The sound was obscene. "That bracelet is just so beautiful, Margot," she said, her voice smooth and warm. "David had such classic taste. You really should wear it more often. It looks lovely on you." My skin prickled where she touched me. I looked at her perfectly sincere face, her kind eyes, and I felt nothing but ice. She was admiring her own treachery, complimenting the cheap replacement she had put on my wrist. I forced a smile. "Thank you, dear. That is very sweet. I think I will." After dinner, as we were clearing the plates, I set the final piece of the trap. I went into the study, leaving the door ajar. They could both see me. I went to the safe, paused, and pretended to fumble the combination. "Oh, fiddle. What is it? 42. No. Need help?" "Mom," Julian called from the living room, sounding amused. No, I have got it," I said. Finally swinging the heavy door open, I began to rummage inside, moving the empty velvet boxes. I let out a small, confused sound. "Oh, that is odd." Brooke was at my side in a second. "What is it? Margot, what is wrong?" I turned to her, my face a mask of mild, elderly confusion. "Oh, it is nothing, dear. I am sure it is silly. I was just looking for that old brooch. You know, David's mother's diamond pin. The one I never wear. I was thinking I should have it appraised for insurance." I looked around the study, as if expecting it to be sitting on a bookshelf. "But I cannot seem to find it. It is not in the box." I tapped my temple. Honestly, my head is still on that ship. I am getting so terribly forgetful. I probably put it somewhere for safekeeping and cannot remember where. Brooke's face flooded with a sickening, false sympathy. She put her arm around my shoulders. "Oh, Margot, do not you worry one bit. You are just tired from your trip. I am sure it is just misplaced. We will find it." She guided me out of the study. "You go sit down. Put your feet up. Let me help you look for it." I allowed her to lead me to the sofa. "Would you, dear? That is so kind. I just feel so scattered." "Of course," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "That is what I am here for. To help you." She turned and walked back into the study, the picture of a devoted daughter-in-law, eager to search for the very thing she had already stolen and sold. I played the part of the frail, forgetful matriarch for 2 days. It was the most exhausting performance of my life. I watched Brooke, helpfully, tidy my study, her eyes scanning for any other valuables I might have misplaced. I listened to Julian talk about his stressful job. Every word they spoke was a lie, and every smile I returned was a betrayal of a different kind. On the 3rd morning, I told them I was having lunch with an old friend from the Gemology Guild. The relief on their faces, the relief of getting the confused old woman out of the house for a few hours, was palpable. I did not go to lunch. I drove straight to Harrison's office. He was not alone. The investigator he had hired, a quiet man in a plain suit named Mr. Peters, was sitting in the corner of the room, a thick manila folder on his lap. The air in the office was cold. "Margaret," Harrison said, skipping the pleasantries. "Sit down. Mr. Peters has concluded his initial inquiry. The situation is darker than we anticipated." I sat, my back rigid. "Tell me." Mr. Peters opened the folder. He did not waste time. We started with DeSoto Fine Jewels on the 9th floor. The name Brooke visited. And? I asked. It is a shell corporation. It was registered 18 months ago. It has no retail footprint, no public inventory, and has been flagged twice in the last year by FinCEN for suspicious wire transfers. It is a classic money laundering front, specializing in jewelry and art. My mind spun, trying to process the term. Money laundering. That is not the operative fact. Margaret, Harrison interjected, his voice grim. Tell her who owns it. Peters? Mr. Peters looked at his notes. The principal owner listed on the incorporation documents is a Mr. Marcus Thorne. The name meant nothing to me. He is Brooke's paternal uncle, Harrison said. I stared at him. The room seemed to tilt. This was not just my daughter-in-law being greedy. This was not a moment of weakness. This was an organized, premeditated conspiracy. My son had not just married a woman with expensive tastes. He had married into a family of professional criminals. They had a system already in place to absorb and liquidate my assets. That, I said, my voice barely a whisper, is shocking. It gets worse, Harrison said. We investigated Julian's promotion. Mr. Peters spoke again, his voice the same dispassionate monotone. I contacted the head of human resources at Innovate Solutions. There was no promotion. There was no bonus. I closed my eyes. I knew this was coming. Julian Davies has not been an employee of Innovate Solutions for 3 months, Harrison said, taking over. He was terminated in August. Terminated why? Incompetence, according to his file. And? Harrison paused. Petty theft. He was caught falsifying his expense reports. They chose not to press charges to avoid the bad publicity. He is unemployable in the tech field. I felt the floor disintegrate beneath me. 3 months. For 3 months. My son had been unemployed. He had been living in my house, eating my food, pretending to go to work every day, all while his wife systematically hollowed out my safe. The story of taking care of me was a lie to cover his own failure. The new bag, the diamond watch, the red Maserati. It was all funded by me. The vulgarity of it was staggering. And then, Harrison said, his voice dropping, there is the final blow. Peters. The investigator slid a single sheet of paper across the polished desk. It was a printed email. We recovered this from a search of their shared cloud accounts, Peters said. It was sent from Julian's email address 2 days ago, but the linguistic markers suggest it was written by Brooke. It was addressed to a senior wealth advisor at one of the most prestigious and aggressive financial firms in the city. I read the subject line, Query Asset Management Options for Aging Parents and Procedures for Power of Attorney. My blood turned to ice. My eyes scanned the body of the email. I saw fragments of my own performance, my own forgetfulness, twisted and weaponized against me. Significant signs of cognitive decline. Deeply concerned, she is no longer capable of managing her own significant financial affairs. Misplacing valuable items. Confusion about recent events. We feel it is our duty to step in and protect her assets. They have an appointment, Harrison said, his voice like steel. Next Tuesday. They are not just stealing your jewelry. Margaret, that was just the seed money. They are making a legal, documented case that you are mentally incompetent. The full, horrifying picture finally snapped into focus. They were not just stealing from me. They were planning to erase me. They were going to use my own forgetfulness as the weapon to have me declared unfit, seize control of my entire estate, the house, the stocks, everything David and I had built, and then liquidate it all through Brooke's criminal uncle. The theft was not the crime. It was just the first step. I sat in Harrison's office, the printed email trembling in my hand. The words cognitive decline and power of attorney swam before my eyes. They were going to strip me of my home, my identity, and my sanity. They cannot be allowed to go to that meeting, I said, my voice shaking. On the contrary, Margaret, Harrison said, his voice a cold balm. They absolutely are going to that meeting. We are not going to stop it. I looked at him, confused. But we, Harrison said, leaning forward, are going to attend it. The senior wealth advisor they think they are meeting. He is an old colleague of mine. He has already agreed to lend us his conference room. They are walking into our meeting, not theirs. A slow, cold understanding dawned on me. This was not just a defense. This was an ambush. I am filing the criminal complaints tomorrow, Harrison continued, his voice crisp and official. Larceny, fraud, conspiracy, financial elder abuse. I am filing for an immediate asset freeze on Marcus Thorne and DeSoto Fine Jewels, citing the GIA certificates and your testimony. I have the termination report from Innovate Solutions. I have their bank records, showing the deposit from DeSoto and the exact cashier's check used to buy that ridiculous car. He paused. We have everything we need to convict them. But, Margaret, I know you. I know David. This is your son. I want to give them an opportunity to hang themselves with their own words. We need one final piece. Something that proves, beyond any doubt, their malicious intent. Something that shows a jury exactly what was in their hearts. I knew what he meant. The email was damning. But hearing them say it, that would be the end. I know what to do, I said. I need a recorder. A small one. That evening, I returned to the house, which now felt like a stage set for a horror movie. I had a tiny, voice-activated digital recorder from Harrison's Investigator in my pocket. It was no bigger than a tube of lipstick. I found Julian and Brooke in the living room, watching a movie, their feet up on the coffee table. The new red car was visible through the window, gleaming under the porch light like a drop of blood. I stood in the doorway, wringing my hands, playing the part of the confused woman they had written about in their email. Oh, dear, I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. Brooke paused the movie. What is wrong? Margot. Her voice was laced with an impatient kindness. It is just all this talk of the brooch and my trip. I feel so terribly forgetful lately, I said, letting my voice waver. It is really starting to frighten me. Julian looked uncomfortable, but Brooke sat up, her eyes sharp. What do you mean? Margot. I mean, I am worried about managing my finances, I said, walking into the room. The house, the stocks David left. It is all so complicated. What if I make a mistake? What if I forget to pay a bill? I do not know if I can handle it all by myself anymore. This was the bait. I was handing them the very words they wanted to hear. Brooke's face softened into a mask of pure, predatory concern. Margot, that is a completely valid feeling. You should not have to carry that burden alone. I know. I sighed again, walking over to the large bookshelf. As I talked, I let my hand trail over the knickknacks. I slipped the tiny recorder from my pocket and placed it behind a heavy silver picture frame of David and me. I just do not know what to do. We will talk about it in the morning, Brooke said soothingly. You are just tired. Let's get you to bed. I let her guide me to my room. I closed my door. And I waited. I waited for hours, listening to the muffled sounds of the television, then the sound of them brushing their teeth, their doors closing. I waited until 1 a.m, when the house was completely silent. I crept back down the stairs. The living room was dark. I retrieved the recorder and, my heart pounding, went to my own bathroom, locked the door, and pressed play. For a minute, there was only silence. Then, I heard the sound of the television being clicked off. Brooke's voice, no longer warm, but sharp and metallic. She's admitting she's confused herself. It is perfect. She is literally writing our case for us. A rustle. Julian's voice, hesitant. I do not know. Brooke. Power of attorney. That feels extreme. Brooke let out a sharp, exasperated sigh. Oh, stop it. She just told us she cannot handle her own finances. We are helping her. But selling the house. Julian's voice was small. Then came Brooke's voice. It was cold. It was the coldest thing I had ever heard. Do not be weak, Julian. Not now. Did your job at Innovate Solutions buy that Maserati? No. I did. With one old-fashioned pin. This entire house, the stocks, it is all just sitting here, rotting, like she is. That car was just the start. There was a long pause. It is our turn, she said. Now, get to bed. We have a big meeting on Tuesday. I pressed stop. I had it. I had the executioner's song. Tuesday morning was bright and clear. I was in the kitchen, drinking my coffee, when they came downstairs. They looked magnificent. A true power couple. Julian was in his best suit, the one I had bought him for David's funeral. Brooke was in a sharp, white designer dress, her new $30,000 watch gleaming on her wrist. They looked powerful. They looked rich. They looked like predators who had just closed a major deal. Big day today, you two? I asked, sipping my coffee, my hand perfectly steady. Just a very important meeting with some new partners. Mum, Julian said, avoiding my eyes as he straightened his tie. You should stay home and rest, Brooke said, her voice smooth. We will probably be late. Oh, I will, dear, I said. You just have a wonderful meeting. I hope it goes well for you. I am sure it will, Brooke said, smiling. I watched from the living room window as they got into the red Maserati. They were a perfect portrait of stolen success. They drove to the Senior Wealth Advisors building. It was another tower of glass and steel, even more impressive than the one Brooke's uncle inhabited. They walked into the lobby, arm in arm, confident. A receptionist they had spoken to on the phone greeted them. Mr. and Mrs. Davies, Mr. Hamilton is ready for you. He is in the main conference room, at the end of the hall. They walked down the plush, silent corridor. They pushed open the heavy, frosted glass doors, and they froze. It was a vast room, with a wall of glass overlooking the city. But they did not see the view. They only saw what was at the long, polished mahogany table. It was not Mr. Hamilton, the wealth advisor. It was me. I was sitting at the head of the table. To my right sat Mr. Harrison. To my left sat two quiet, serious-looking men in suits. Their badges were resting on the table, next to their notebooks. Julian stopped breathing. He physically recoiled, as if he had walked into a wall. Brooke's face, so perfectly made up, went the color of her white dress. Her painted red mouth opened. What? What the hell is this? Where is Mr. Hamilton? Mr. Harrison stood up slowly, his hands flat on the table. Mr. Hamilton was unfortunately detained. My name is Mr. Harrison. I am Margaret's attorney. And this, he said, his voice echoing in the large, silent room, is not a financial consultation. This is an arrest. Arrest. Julian choked out the word. We have copies for you, Harrison said, gesturing to two thick folders on the table. He clicked a remote. The large television screen on the wall lit up. Let's review the evidence. The first slide appeared. It was a high-resolution, scanned image of the GIA certificate for my 25th anniversary bracelet. Beside it, a grainy surveillance, still of Brooke, at the counter of DeSoto Fine Jewels, handing that exact bracelet to a man. Brooke stared at the screen. Click. The GIA certificate for the emerald earrings. Beside it, another still. Click. The sapphire necklace. Click. You have been busy, Harrison said. We have also been busy. Next slide. A copy of Julian's termination letter from Innovate Solutions appeared. For cause. Harrison read aloud. Falsification of expense reports. Petty theft. Julian was shaking his head, whispering, no, no. Next slide. The email. Their email. The one they had sent just days before. The words, cognitive decline, misplacing valuable items, and power of attorney were highlighted in red. You cannot, Brooke stammered, finding her voice. She is confused. She is senile. She gave us those things. They were gifts. Were they? I asked. It was the first time I had spoken. My voice was calm. Was it a gift? Brooke, when you went to your uncle's money laundering front, was it a gift? Julian, when you used my money to buy that car to celebrate a promotion you never got. You cannot prove any of this. Brooke shrieked. It is the word of a crazy old woman against ours. You are right, I said. It is. But I also have your word. I reached into my handbag and pulled out the small, black digital recorder. I placed it on the polished table. I pressed play. The room filled with their voices. She's admitting she's confused herself. It is perfect. Julian's hesitant, weak voice. But, selling the house. And then, Brooks. Cold, clear, and damning. Do not be weak, Julian. Not now. That car was just the start. It is our turn. The audio clicked off. The silence in the room was absolute. Julian let out a sound, a terrible, strangled sob, and collapsed into one of the expensive leather chairs. He put his head in his hands. Mom. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Brooke was not crying. She was staring at me, her face a mask of pure reptilian hatred. You, miserable, old, bitch. She screamed. She lunged across the corner of the table, her hands clawed, aiming for my face. She never made it. The two officers were out of their chairs before she had taken a full step. One of them caught her by the arms, spun her around, and slammed her against the wall. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was brutally loud. Brooke Thorne Davies, the officer said, his voice flat. You are under arrest for grand larceny, felony fraud. and conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse. Brooke was screaming, a wild, wordless sound of rage. The second officer walked calmly over to my son, who was still weeping at the table. "You too, son?" the officer said, placing a hand on Julian's shoulder. "Get up. Put your hands behind your back." I stood up. I straightened my jacket. I watched as they were led, one screaming and one sobbing, out of the glass conference room. They were walked past the shocked receptionists, through the marble lobby, and out into the bright, unforgiving sunlight. The trap, so carefully set, had finally and completely sprung. Thank you all so much for listening. Let me know where you are tuning in from in the comments below. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it that extra boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.